Hello, welcome back to the videos. This is video number 2 in that series about playing and singing. And in the previous video we looked at just vamps and some more advanced concepts for vamping behind yourself while you sing. And in this one we'll ramp up to another level of complexity, because most of the time when you mention rolling, playing 3-finger roll patterns while you sing, that tends to be, for most players, another plateau that they aim for, and it tends to be harder for them to do. And again, one of the key things to take in consideration is when you're singing, your voice, the way you inflect the notes of the song that you're singing, the way you syncopate your voice does not have to match the roll patterns. Because if you did, then you'd wind up some pretty quirky, weird sounding roll patterns, and your voice and your rolls would be locked in together in this kind of deadlock thing. Now again, if you decide to do that because you think it's cool, that's one thing. But generally speaking, you don't want your voice to be a slave to your rolls. You want the rolls to provide that syncopated 3-finger Scruggs kind of pattern that we're all used to hearing. But you want your voice to kind of do what it wants to do, which is represent the melody and then do different kinds of things. So again, that analogy of, you know, the notes of the roll being like the wave and your vocals riding over the wave, they don't have to correspond to the exact spot all the time to each other. But they do have to be in time, so they have to be synced, you know, measure-wise together. So let's look at the different kinds of rolls. When you play rolls behind other people or behind yourself when you're singing, of course our video is about us singing and playing, I try to pick one dedicated roll that I know I can do well as a starting point. So I'm going to use forward rolls, which are rolls that always flow with the notes going this direction. I'm going to use forward rolls. I'm going to use 5-3-1 for G, maybe 2-1-5 for C, back to G, 5-3-1, and then maybe 4-3-1 for the D roll, and we'll do 9-pound hammer again. And I'm not going to do any left hand techniques like slides or hammers or any of that stuff. I'm just going to try to keep a syncopated 3-note roll going. But again, we do not want our voice to match the syncopated roll, because then our vocals would sound like that. I don't think you want your vocals to sound like that. So again, I'm going to try to do the head pat, stomach rub at the same time. Let the melody of the song kind of do its thing. And if you're new at this, you do not have to make your voice really syncopated. What do I mean by that? I'll give you an example. You don't have to go, it's a 9-pound hammer, yeah, yeah, it's a little too heavy, where you're doing all these kind of rhythmic moves inside the structure of the song. You don't have to play around with your voice like that. You can sing a very straight vocal line, but it still should not match every note of the roll, because you don't want to get locked into this thing where every note of a roll matches a word that you sing. That will sound very blocked out and very mechanical. We don't want that. You could sing it a little straighter. It's a 9-pound hammer. It's a little, you know, you could sing it a little, that would still be a little more mechanical sounding, but not where each word is directly tied to the notes that you're playing. So again, I'm going to try 9-pound hammer, and I'm going to do 5-3-1 for G, 2-1-5, and then 4-3-1 for D. So I'll have 3 distinct kind of rolls as just a starting point. You're not limited to this, but we'll just start with it. No slides or hammers. It's a 9-pound hammer. It's a little too heavy for my size. Honey, for my size. Well, roll on, buddy, with your load of coal. How can I roll when the wheels won't go? Now you may have noticed something too. I did not play a wall of banjo. What do I mean by that? I didn't play continual streams of 8-note rolls or 16-note rolls, depending on what your timing signature is. I didn't just sit there and just make every spot in the measure full of notes. I would stop the roll at some point, put maybe an 8-note rest in there, you know, put some holes in the playing. But now if that's harder for you to do, then by all means, because we're just practicing here, you can try to fill every spot in the song with notes, but you have to think a little bit ahead. When C comes up, what string I'm on now. If I'm still playing 5-3-1, how do I get to 2-1-5? You know, so it helps sometimes to put a rest in there to give yourself a little escape window there, so you can get to the next roll and then start it. But you do whatever feels comfortable to you. Now, what if I added slides or hammers? Well, that would take the rhythm up to a new level. I mean, not the rhythm, but the sound of the roll. So maybe I'll do 4-3-1 as a slide, and then switch to 5-3-1. So 4-3-1 will be my introductory roll to kind of get me off on a good, powerful slide. And then I'll switch to 5-3-1, same roll I used before. And then when I go to 2-1-5, maybe I'll do a hammer on the second string. And then when I go to the D roll eventually, and I'm playing 4-3-1, maybe I'll slide into the fourth string note. I don't know. Just little things to subtly make the rolls that you're playing a little more exciting. It's a 9-pound hammer. It's a little too heavy for my size. Honey, for my size. With your load of coal, how can I roll when the wheels won't go? So you can hear it adds a little more oomph in places. I'm using basically the 4-3-1 to introduce a new measure, or to highlight the beginning, the first beat of the measure, which is usually a pretty strong beat. But again, the hammers and the slides are not changing the overall feel of the rolls. They're just kind of adding some extra force, I guess, some extra drive to it, and it does sound good. You know, it sounds a little more exciting than just a regular roll. Now, all of those were forward rolls. So you might say, okay, John, well, what about alternating thumb, reverse roll, backwards roll? Well, each particular roll that you choose, like the standard rolls, which we know are forward, reverse, or forward, backwards, reverse, alternating thumb, and maybe double thumb if you want to include that as 5. Each one of those rolls has a particular kind of feel, a syncopated feel to it. Forward rolls are by far probably the vehicle roll of choice if you're doing just standard rolling back up, even up the neck, which we'll do in a second. But you're not limited to that, so don't let me trick you into thinking, well, I have to do forward rolls all the time. You don't. You can mix them up. But if you catalog, say, a typical Scruggs style rolling backup section of a song or the whole song, probably 60-70% of the rolls there would be forward roll for the most part. So your foundation rolls will be forward rolls, and you'll hear Earl slip in some backwards rolls, some reverse rolls, alternating thumb. So let's experiment with that. Let me try an alternating thumb roll, which is 3-2-5-1, 4-2-5-1. Now, again, this is going to have a different kind of feel, but I'm going to see if I can do it through the whole song. And you compare that to what we did with the forward rolls and see which one you like or dislike. And remember, one's not right or wrong, but when you're talking about the context of like bluegrass singing over bluegrass rolling banjo backup, you'll see the difference in them. So I'm going to use alternating thumb. 3-2-5-1, 4-2-5-1. Ready? Here we go. It's a 9-pound hammer. It's a little too heavy for my size. Honey, for my size. Well, roll, buddy, with your load of coal. How can I roll when the wheels won't go? That's nice and rhythmic and has this kind of dedicated beat. But you'll notice that the rhythm there is more, it's not as direct. And this is kind of hard to describe with words. Let me play that measure of G with the slide again, forward roll, 4-3-1, 5-3-1. And you compare what you feel as far as propulsion. Do you feel like the roll notes are coming at you like a piston? Or does it feel more like a windshield wiper where there's not a continual motion? I'll switch to alternating thumb and see if you can feel the difference. It's a 9-pound hammer. It's a little too It's a 9-pound hammer. It's a little too heavy for my size. Honey, for my size. And again, I don't think alternating thumb is a wrong choice, but in terms of how the roll hits you, if you're talking about a bluegrass type feel. Now, if this is a country or a folk feel or some other kind of feel you're looking for, alternating thumb probably a better choice for that. But if you're looking for that driving Scruggs rolling backup that everybody's familiar with, alternating thumb tends to shift this side, that side. Strong, weak, strong, weak. Where the syncopated forward roll comes at you in ways where certain notes get different emphasis from measure to measure, so you can't really predict exactly where the emphasis is going to fall in a forward roll, because the syncopated nature of a roll means that every new measure, a different note in that 3-note pattern would be the lead note, would get the extra emphasis. So I think for drive purposes, forward would probably be better. But again, now if you're looking for a country kind of beat or something, alternating thumb would be good. It may get a little boring to do alternating thumb through the whole thing, but again, this is all based on what you think sounds good. What about reverse roll? Some people call this the Doug Dillard roll, where you like 3, 2, 1, 5, 1, 2, 3 as a repeating pattern. Again, that has its own characteristic kind of syncopated feel. Each roll feels different. Let me try to do that roll through the whole song. I'll do 3, 2, 1, 5, 1, 2, 3 pretty much over all 3 chords. And again, listen for the feel, the way the rolls come at you, and see, compare that to what we heard in the forward roll. Ready? It's a 9-pound hammer. It's a little too heavy for my size. Honey, for my size. Well, buddy, with your load of coal, how can I roll when a wheel's nothing really wrong with that, again, as far as right or wrong, but it is a very predictable The notes are easy to pick out. It's easy for your brain to pick out exactly what notes are happening. And if you double the third string, which some people do, then you have a definite starting and stopping point. Again, the feeling or the rhythm of that roll is da 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 da. Da, 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 da. It's more of a start, stop, start, stop. And for bluegrass, rolling back up like Scruggs style, you wouldn't hear Earl or any hardcore Scruggs player using the reverse roll that much. You could do it in places, but then again you would switch back to a forward roll. You could use alternating thumb for a while, but you probably wouldn't use it through the whole song in a bluegrass hardcore driving situation, which is what we're talking about. But if you wanted more of that country laid-back feel, or you like that shifting, kind of feel, you can do it. But again, no right or wrong, but forward rolls should be probably your dedicated go-to roll pattern for the drive, and then you can shift to forward, come back to rolling, forward rolls, and maybe alternating thumb in places. But, again, each one has its own particular feel. What about the backwards roll? I'll do 1, 3, 5. And then 1, 2, 5 for C, and then 1, 3, 4, which is the same notes I used in the forward roll in the beginning of the video. We'll just turn them all backwards, reverse the notes. Ready? It's a 9-pound hammer. It's a little too heavy for my size. For my size. Well, buddy, with your load of coal, how can I roll? That has a nice propulsive feel. It's a little different than the forward roll. It has kind of a different, I don't know, it's really hard to describe with words, but when you feel it, if you play these sections of songs like we're doing, measure by measure, and compare the feel of them, each one has its own particular feel. And again, my goal in this video is not to convince anybody not to play this and not to play that. You try everything. One thing I will say is to not mix every one of those rolls up every measure. What do I mean by that? Well, because each one of these rolls has its own dedicated feel, its own rhythmic syncopation, if you start mixing them together too much, too quickly, they kind of work against each other. It's kind of like an engine with the spark plug wires pulled off in places. The engine starts to miss. Let me give you an example of that. This is something you might hear players do where they kind of are not conscious of how the notes are blending together. They'll just jump from one roll to another without really thinking about how they mesh. It's a 9-pound hammer. It's a little too heavy for my size. For my size. Well, buddy, make your load of coal. How can I roll? You can immediately tell I don't even need to finish that song. Start, stop, start, stop. The syncopations of each roll is actually working against each other. You can occasionally link two together, like forward roll, reverse roll, but there has to be a smooth blending or juxtaposition between those two patterns. But if you try to play all 4 or 5 of the like basic rolls that you might hear, and you try to just willy-nilly put them together, they kind of work against each other. So, and again, adding slides and hammers and things like that to the patterns just increase the audio effect, I guess, of what the listener hears. It gives a little more drive in places. It emphasizes certain notes you want to emphasize. But they're forward roll based. If we went up the neck and used the forward roll like the in the mood roll, and then we kind of put some rests in there in places, you'd have some pretty good forward roll based up the neck rolls. Again, I'm just doing 3, 2, 1 as a syncopated pattern. It's a 9-pound hammer. It's a little too heavy for my size. Honey, for my size. Well, roll on, buddy, with your load of coal. How can I roll when the wheels won't roll? And remember, you don't have to have a wall of notes. If you really dissect what I played, I would be starting and stopping in weird places, playing a forward roll, 3, 2, 1, stop, play 2, 3, 1, 3, 2, 1, 1, 3, 2. You know, I can mix it up, but they're still forward roll based for the most part. And if you go back into what we did down low and you start playing alternating thumb up here, again, for driving bluegrass rolls behind yourself, that's probably not going to help you, because it's going to make you get into more of a country kind of folk, laid back kind of rhythmic feel, which you don't want if you're trying to keep that drive going. Because let's face it, a lot of bluegrass is about keeping, even on a slower tempo song, you want to keep the song coming at you like a piston. Forward rolls are probably the key for that, even up the neck. But you can switch, you can drop in an alternating thumb roll in places. And again, if the song you're playing needs a certain feel and forward roll's not giving it to you, I can't say it, then you can switch to those other rolls. But when we're talking about hardcore rolling while you're singing on a typical song like this, forward roll should be your go-to rolls. And you can mix the patterns up a little bit, start and stop on different notes, add different combinations of strings. 5, 3, 1. The 3 simple rolls that I did over G, C, and D are just very basic. You can mix in any kind of rolls you want. So that'll wrap up this video. In the next video, we'll maybe advance some of the rolls that we're playing. I'll show you some different roll patterns, and then we'll try to drop in licks that are roll-based licks, or maybe chord-shape-based licks, so that you can tie all this together. We can have vamps as one type of rhythm, then we can step up to rolling back up, and then we can step up to doing rolling back up interspersed with licks in appropriate places. And we'll talk about those places that are good spots to put the licks and how to weave it all together. So hope you enjoyed this video and you get something good out of it. So open your mouth and sing and play your banjo. We'll see you next time.